Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning everyone. My title of paper is Revisiting Anglo-Indian Community and Making and Unmaking of Anglo-Indian Identity in Late Colonial India. This paper, this paper explores the community's ambivalent feeling towards the British and Indians, its sense of pride, and other communities' apathy toward the Anglo-Indians. This paper also analyzes how the Anglo-Indian community suffers from the identity dilemma in the late colonial period in India. The discovery of maritime route to the South Asia in the last decade of the 15th century opened the new land of wealth for European countries and began a new era of extensive trade and commerce between the nations of Europe and those of the Far East. In the early days, when the sea voyage was long and perilous and men had perforce to settle down for many years, they formed alliance with the women of the land. That custom was then recognized as necessity, and consequently they entered into the more or less permanent marriage relations with the native women. After a few generations of trade and political expansion, offspring of these mixed marriages proved extremely useful for Europeans to expand its territories in South Asia. Such offspring of mixed marriages were in the special position and tended to form a self-conscious communities called Anglo-Indian. Since the Indian census of 1911, the term has referred to the domicile community of mixed descent who were formerly known as East Indians and Eurasian. Anglo-Indian form one of the largest and oldest community of the mixed descent in the world and continue to live in India as well as across the wider diaspora, particularly Britain, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and United States. The Anglo-Indian community owes its genesis to the advent in India of European in general and of British in particular. It is, however, the appearance of the British in India that real history of Anglo-Indian begins and community having common interests, manners, custom emerges. The Anglo-Indian were concentrated in those areas where maximum European contact had occurred. In the four largest port cities, Calcutta, Bombay, Madras, and Rangoon, live the 2/3 of the Anglo-Indian Indians, and while the additional 1/3 live in the other parts of the provinces in which the cities are located. Anglo-Indians were predominantly city dwellers, and their life and problems have an urban setting. The dilemma of identity. With the increasing space of freedom movement against the British rule and with the constantly changing socio-political and economic condition, Anglo-Indians became worried about their position and future in Indian society. In 1923, the Anglo-Indian Association of Bengal called the meeting at Calcutta to discuss the Anglo-Indian should retain their distinctive identity or should identify themselves with the Indians as far as civil activities are concerned, or to seek to Indianize. Henry Gidney in the same conference said that the Anglo-Indians are very much confused about their position and identity of the community. I quote, "What did they call themselves? No doubt everyone present there called himself an Anglo-Indian, but had they any right to call themselves such?" And he said that some Anglo-Indian employees of the East Indian Railways brought to his notice that they were described as East Indian in the records of railway, and it was only by common usage that they were called Anglo-Indians. He said that Anglo-Indians must determine what they were. They were the sons of the soil, neither Europeans nor Indians, but ipso facto the citizen of country. He maintained that Anglo-Indian should not have the slightest hesitation in calling himself a citizen of India. It was time that the community, while maintaining its distinctive communal existence, should join hands with the Indians in the attainment of self-government for India within the British Empire by constitutional method. The meeting of Anglo-Indian community of Calcutta declared that, I quote, "The domicile community look upon themselves as one of the permanent and distinct communities in India as much as are citizens of India in every respect. We are desirous of living in peace, harmony and cooperation with other communities in India, are ready in the future as in the past to help India to attain local self-government within the British Empire on the constitutional line," unquote. In 1931, the position of Anglo-Indian under the new constitution was discussed at length by the Henry Gidney, and he urged to the Anglo-Indians, I quote him, "The present day conflict between the ever-changing East and the never-changing West must find Anglo-Indian ranging himself more and more alongside the Indian in constitutional advance to the dominion status. This, I submit, is the first essential for the future of the Anglo-Indian. Otherwise, India offers no place for the community. But by this I do not mean that he must sacrifice his communal identity and distinctiveness, or that loyalty to the new India implies disloyalty to the British. On the contrary, I could not conceive of the prosperous and well-organized and administered India separated from England, for each is equally in need of others' loyalty and cooperation, without which neither nation will prosper nor or advance, unquote. It was in 1930s under the leadership of the Henry Gidney that Anglo-Indians began to turn the Indians for recognition for their special status. Dual loyalties with the priority for England, however, continued, cursing the British for letting them down. The Herbert Starks made the impassionate appeal to the English and the Indians. I quote him, if England is the land of our fathers, India is the land of our mothers. It is us, England is a hallowed memory, India is a living verity. If the England is the land of our pilgrimage and India is the land of our homes, if England is there as a land of inspiring tradition, India is loved for all that she means to us in our daily life, unquote. Henry Gandhi speaking in Bangalore put the case to his Anglo-Indian fraternity as harshly as he could, and I quote him, deny the fact that you are sons and citizens of India, disclaim it, conceal it in your efforts to ape what you are not. You soon be that not wanted at all. The opportunity is yours today to more closely associate yourself from early school life with the rest of India, to realize that you, with all other communities, have right to live in this, your country, that you are first and last son of India. If there is one thing which you must completely eradicate from yourself, it is the retention of the superiority and inferiority complexes. You should bring about their replacement with the complex of equality. The Anglo-Indian community seemed to be the caught between the desire to join in European attitudes of superiority and the prejudice toward the Indians, a feeling of rejection by Indians who consider them as others because of their Western-oriented culture. Henry Gidney, throughout his political career, he played a significant role in seeking eradication of the community's European attitude of superiority and prejudice against the other Indians, and the recognition of Anglo-Indian communities' asserted status of belonging on the political map of India. The Alison Brunt in his Domicile and Diaspora analysis that Gidney's attempt to shift the Anglo-Indian orientation gradually used the dualistic formula of India as a motherland alongside the Britain as a fatherland. Because neither the Anglo-Indian community nor Gidney himself were ready to renounce an ongoing affiliation to the Britain, even while Gidney sought to increase their simultaneous identification with India. She argues that Gidney did not want to conceive of there having to be the binary choices between identification with the Britain and India. Gidney wanted to assert both. With his formula, he could do so because he imagined a future for India as always being aligned with the Britain, even under the future of dominion status tied to the British crown within the empire or commonwealth. He did not want to even consider the possibility of Indian Republic, which might reject the membership in the empire and commonwealth. The M.G. Kher, the chief minister of Bombay province, said in 1938 at the annual general meeting of the Bombay branch of Anglo-India Association, I quote him, "Your community not be always casting longing glances at the west, but to throw yourself heart and soul into the life and movement around you. This is your motherland. Do not look upon yourself as aliens, but share the difficulties and struggle for freedom in which the rest of us are engaged," unquote. In September 1933, Anglo-Indian Study Circle and Book Club were organized in Calcutta with the purpose, as set down then and maintained since, to use the booklets to foster the atmosphere of Anglo-Indian consciousness in the community and cultivate the knowledge of Anglo-Indian past, present and future. Yet the Anglo-Indian Association defined position of community in its relation with other elements of the Indian national life. At the conference of the Anglo-Indian leaders held in New Delhi on 20th March 1942, the following resolution was adopted and statement of community. I quote, "The community fully recognized that as one of the minorities of India, its progress and prosperity are indissolubly linked with the progress and prosperity of country, and therefore associates and identify itself fully, unequivocally with those elements of Indian national life which aim at the constitutional development of India to status of complete equality with the dominions of the British Empire. In view of its origin, religion, culture, this conference determines that Anglo-Indian community shall, however, retain its communal identity equally with the other groups and community who form the elements of Indian national life," unquote. Thus, the the right to preserve a communal identity was being used to assert an ongoing right to maintain the group's distinctively Western-oriented and European culture. Frank Anthony, who succeeded Henry Gidney in 1942 as a leader of Anglo-Indian association, looked for opportunity to resolve this dilemma of identity in crucial areas of the transfer of power. I quote him. He said, "We are Anglo-Indian by community. Of that fact, we have every reason to be proud. We have forged a history in many ways notable, of which any much larger community anywhere in the world could be justifiably proud. Let us cling tenaciously to all that we hold dear, our language, our way of life, and our distinctive culture. But let us always remember that we are Indians, the community is Indian, it has always been Indian. Above all, it is an unalienable Indian birthright. The more we love, are loyal to India, the more will India love and be loyal to us," unquote. Between the 1930s and 1947, Anglo-Indian became increasingly concerned about their identity and future in Indian society. Most Anglo-Indian felt that their ties were closer to the Great Britain than to India, that they would have a better future in England, and others, including the leaders of Anglo-Indian Association, attempted to make alliance with the leaders of Indian national movement. The Anglo-Indian have not developed an independent position in Indian life, but rather have always attempted to identify themselves with the European population despite the constant rejection. In 1930, K.E. Wallace, an Anglo-Indian, proclaimed that, I quote him, "We are Britishers we are, and Britishers we ever must and shall be. Once relinquish this name and permit ourselves to be the style Eurasian or statutory natives of India, we became estranged from our proud heritage as a Britisher," unquote. Another Anglo-Indian has stated that, however black he may be, I quote, "However black he may be, the Eurasian stubbornly resists the submergence of his identity with the natives of the country, for he is proud of his Anglicized custom and his remote connection with the ruling race," unquote. This is antipathy of Indians were submitted by the Anglo-Indians in memorandum submitted to Simon Commission in 1928. I quote there, "Indeed, most Indians, if not all, look upon anyone who calls himself an Anglo-Indian as antagonistic in all fields of employment as much as foreigner as a Britisher," unquote. In the mid-20th century, in the face of this impending crisis, various reactions were apparent. Some Anglo-Indians viewed the future with indifference, others with the despair. Still others have dispatched numerous appeals to the British government entreating for the continuance of special Anglo-Indian privilege under the new Indian Constitution. One of the major problems Anglo-Indian community faced throughout the history is the question of identity. Who am I? It was not easy for Anglo-Indian to construct their own identity because Europeans consider them as Indians with some European blood, and Indian consider them as European with some Indian blood. In the colonial period, the British and Anglo-Indian had much in common: language, religion, culture, and lifestyle. However, Anglo-Indians were hardly ever treated on par with the European. European tended to think them as Indian with some European blood, and Indian thought them with European with some Indian blood. The fact that Anglo-Indian were the Indian national by birth but culturally oriented to Britain often made their status confusing to themselves and to the others. The departure of the British left the community in the state of confusion. The new reality rose a feeling of insecurity and anxiety about its future. A feeling of suspicion and mutual distress had always existed between Anglo-Indians and other communities. The British have also inculcated in the community a feeling of identification with the British power. This emotional attitude was out of place in the new social order. During the transfer of power, Anglo-Indians were left to decide their own fate, and the lack of identification with new political order, with the changed mood of the Indian people, forced the community to reassess its identity and status in India. Vast majority also fear that they will be the persona non grata in India. This led to the migration of thousands of Anglo-Indians, despite the fact that Indian Constitution accepts them as a distinct minority community. Thank you.